FEMA is preparing for large earthquakes on Cascadia subduction zone. Cascadia fault is poised to unleash monster earthquake. The Cascadia subduction zone is poised for a huge earthquake, and FEMA is preparing for the worst. The San Andreas Fault in California may be the most well-known fault line in the country, but the Cascadia subduction zone has the potential to possibly spark even more deadly earthquakes. Cascadia subduction zone runs from the northern California to Vancouver and encompasses about 1,000 miles. A recent report states that the subduction zone has been dormant for stretches of about 245 years on average, and at the end of each dormancy period, the fault is believed to unleash its fury and creates monstrous tremors in the process. The Pacific Northwest region in the Cascadia subduction zone is now 72 years overdue for a killer earthquake, and scientists are predicting that the next time the Cascadia subduction zone wreaks havoc, it will give earthquakes in the magnitude of 8.0 to 9.2 Richter. If an earthquake of such a magnitude hits, some feel it would prompt the worst natural disaster in North American history. The earthquake in Japan in 2011 was magnitude 9.0, and it killed more than 15,000 people. That's why FEMA is developing a response plan to address the aftermath of such a monstrous earthquake given at the Cascadia fault line. The excerpts from the FEMA earthquake response plan says, FEMA projects that nearly 13,000 people will die in the Cascadia earthquake and tsunami, another 27,000 will be injured, and FEMA expects that it will need to provide shelter for 1 million displaced people and food and water for another 2.5 million. So that's a total of about 3.5 to 4 million displaced people. The Indonesian earthquake which took place and the tsunami that followed wreaked havoc. The Indonesian earthquake had a fault line about the size of the Cascadia subduction zone. FEMA states that the death toll would significantly increase if the Cascadia fault line earthquake occurred during warm weather months when citizens and visitors are outdoors and at beaches in the water. The killer quake of such a magnitude could spark a tsunami, which would reportedly strike from Sacramento to Canada. Densely populated areas such as Portland and Seattle would be in the path of that earthquake destruction. What's unsettling is that according to some scientists and FEMA officials, earthquake readiness is not at a level which fosters reassurance. The Pacific Northwest buildings have not been properly retrofitted to withstand earthquakes and are growing concern by emergency management experts. Also, the Pacific Northwest is not earthquake ready. A lack of escape plans and emergency warning systems have also been noted as a mounting problem for response team planners. A very unsettling comment by FEMA Region 10 Director Kenneth Murphy. Region 10 covers Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Alaska regions, and he says, our operating assumption is that everything west of Interstate 5 will be toast. I'll leave a link below for you for this article and for the Wikipedia on Cascadia Fault, just in case you want to see the history of the earthquakes dating to the present from 1500 BC. One thing we haven't touched on in this video is the fact that California does have nuclear power plants on fault lines, and we can have a multiple Fukushima disaster on the west coast of the United States if and when such a earthquake strike in this area does take place. FEMA is preparing for large earthquakes on Cascadia subduction zone. Cascadia fault is poised to unleash monster earthquake. The Cascadia subduction zone is poised for a huge earthquake, and FEMA is preparing for the worst. The San Andreas Fault in California may be the most well-known fault line in the country, but the Cascadia subduction zone has the potential to possibly spark even more deadly earthquakes.